Happy Friday.
Hello.
Friday.
And if you just missed our really cool updated intro countdown, you can catch it over at YouTube in the recorded version.
Nice.
You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So welcome to MCS 45.
Happy Friday.
Yeah.
Friday, y'all.
Let's break the ice. How's everyone doing?
You know, it's been a very sobering week. I have to say that. I'm feeling my generational yeah, I'm blanking on the word right now.
Gen X?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's seeming like the time is coming to an end. You know, I'm feeling my mortality, I guess I put it.
No. Okay. Well, whatever made you occupy your thoughts with that. I think everyone should think about their mortality sometimes. It's a good exercise. Keeps you humble and maybe not get too worked up about things that may not matter. Yeah.
That is actually very, very true. And I think that one of the things that has affected me the most about losing my mom a little over a year ago is that very thing. Is that it just really forces you to think about, I mean, like, you know, you're next in the generation and you have to think about what it is you're doing on this life while you have the time that you have it. Are you making the most of it? Are you being productive? Are you contributing positively to the people in your life, force around you? And are you receiving good energy and forces and positivity around you? Or is it all negative? Or are you thinking about only negative things? Are you making no contribution? Are you only taking from and increasing your debt to society? So that is a big part of it. But you know, every time there's a generational icon, you think about that. I do, at least I think about that. Also, what legacy am I leaving? Some people don't like the word legacy. It doesn't. If you don't like the word legacy, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Are you fulfilling the purpose that you're supposed to be fulfilling, or you want to be fulfilling? And if you're not, fix that. Get to getting.
Do you feel the same way, Eric? Does your mortality make you give you like a different perspective than you were 10 years ago? Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think about it often. I'm getting older. My dad passed away a few years ago, and I'm actually still going through his stuff. This week, I had found a bunch of cassettes that he had, and my dad was a poet and a writer, and he did voiceovers for commercials and things. So he had all these cassette tapes of his various works, and I think I managed to save most of them from his house. His house was a mess when he died, but you know, I couldn't grab everything, so I kind of had to grab as much as I could, and I borrowed a cassette deck from a friend of mine, and I've been digitizing his stuff this week, and so that's a real good trigger. You know what I mean? If you've had a parent or someone that you know and love pass away, and you kind of have to go through their legacy, right? And then check it out, and you start thinking about your own. It's interesting because I grew up with my dad and all this stuff, and it's, you know, when he was alive, it was happening, I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have, you know, and that's on me. It's weird because, you know, you get used to these things as a kid, you know, you get used to all this stuff. It kind of just is. And then when you get older, you go, oh my God, you know, he did a lot of stuff. Like he was constantly, you know, producing, you know, interesting, creative things, you know, contributing. And it's interesting to go through. It's really neat.
Was your dad ever, did both of you discuss politics, or that was just not his thing? He was focused on what he enjoys.
My dad was a was sort of a radical libertarian kind of guy growing up. He was always somebody like I would come in and I would have heard something on the news, trying to be, up on current events as a, a teenager, even, when I was in college. He would always sort of throw, a wrench in the works. He would always ask a question, about it, always, he was always questioning sort of the mainstream narrative. Whenever I was, whenever we would talk about that stuff growing up, and he would always ask something that I would be like, that's not what CNN said, or that's not what Dan Rather said. And he was the first person I knew or even saw that he wanted to bet money on Trump in like early 2016. He was like, as soon as Trump came down that escalator, he's like, he's going to win. And I was like, you're nuts. And he was like, he's going to win. And we literally wrote an entire like blog about it. He wrote a book about the McCain-Obama election.
Wow.
And it was a very controversial book because he was, going into like how Obama was a Marxist, and all this stuff that's sort of, accepted today, to some degree, but just in terms of his tutelage, how he, was embedded with the Chicago, the ex, weathermen. They were his, tutors and his best buddies and stuff. And so long story short, yeah, we talked about politics, but he was always this iconoclastic presence. And he really taught me to kind of just question everything, like everything, even things that you question and you think that, oh, okay, I got the real skinny over here. I question the mainstream narrative and this is true. And then he's like, no, question that. He's like, oh God, now what's true? So that was a very helpful instinct that I learned from him.
That is super interesting. Do you raise your own kids similarly?
Yes, we talk about it all the time. I mean, it's not like we have politics on all the time, but we do watch a little bit. I try and mix it up. You know what I mean? Even though I'm a fairly conservative fella, I don't like just turn on Fox News and let it go. We get everything. And I hear them, they'll say something like, Biden did this, this, this. I'm like, wait a second, right? Like, think about that. Is that true? We don't know. I mean, I didn't like Biden very much, but I was just like, don't jump, head first into these things. Don't start spouting stuff off that you really don't know about.
That. I mean, gosh, it makes me think. Both of my parents were staunch Democrats, and they both were pretty active in the party. My mom was a committee woman at one point in her life, and even a lot of her employment opportunities, her jobs. She actually worked, for Democrats, things like that, or did.
Those are old. To be fair, those were old school Democrats.
Absolutely,
right?
And yes, she was old school. She's very much, kind of the civil rights generation. Both of my parents, of course. So yeah, but they didn't force their politics on us at all. They didn't. They were involved. We participated in the election process. We helped a couple of campaigns, but really she mainly talked to us about elections and made it, a big priority for us to actually vote and be involved in that process. But my mom never made us, vote a certain way. My dad never did. It really wasn't something we talked about as a conversation as a family. I knew what they believed and knew what they thought, but it just wasn't that way. And it wasn't until I was older in my college years and actually even met my husband when I started thinking like, well, hey, wait a minute. I was raised as a conservative, culturally, economically, as individuals, like all of our family values are pretty much in line with what the printed version of what the Republican Party says it is. And so this doesn't make sense that my parents are voting Democrat. So it made me start to think about that, think about not only the way that I voted, but then why are they voting as Democrats? So, but I didn't really get into that deep into the why until later, but I did started voting more as a conservative and really I never declared a party until the Trump years, actually. In Ohio, you can vote in, it's open primaries, but when you vote in the primary, you're technically declaring your party. So I hadn't voted in any primaries until 2016. But Interesting. This is how I raised my kids, similar to what you were just explaining, Eric. Is my husband and I both are, we're pretty conservative, and one day when I used to drive them to school, I drive the girls to school, and I was always listening to Breitbart Radio in the morning, just kind of get my news and different opinions and thoughts, and I would yell at the radio with things I disagreed with, but and kind of nod my head with things I agreed with, but I didn't talk to them so much about issues unless they asked me things. But when they got to be teenagers and conversations about politics brought up, they're on social media or in school interacting with their peers, they perceived us to be these like Trump loyalists, conservatives, and that this is like our belief. They had this idea that these are certain things that we believe. So that partly made me really just kind of cut off radio, cut off TV. That was part of the reason. There was other reasons. So I just started realizing that all of these news outlets were either for one or the other. There's no real kind of moderate voice in news media any longer, and that like really bothered me. I still would occasionally watch CNN. Would still I read from the New York Times, read from the Wall Street Journal, read from all the different various outlets of different points of view to kind of get my information. And we decided to raise our kids similar to the way you are, Eric, and that was what we thought we were doing, but just having even just having the news radio on. But I think we made it much more vocalized after I noticed that and told them, look, we don't want you to believe what we believe unless it's something you truly have looked into and you think about and you believe. But what we want you to do and encourage you to do is to go and look at every single news source about a topic. And if you can find the direct source, so if it's statistics, go and find where they got the stats from. If it's a piece of historical evidence, go and find the original source material. Don't just take someone else's interpretation for it. Read it for yourself, form your own conclusions. And that's hopefully what they'll end up doing. Or being like.
Nice.
Well, I don't have that experience growing up, so it's interesting to hear it from the both of you, because in my native culture, you're not encouraged to discuss politics in the family or just in the household in general, because in other parts of the world, if you discuss politics, the idea is that the government will come after you, so you keep quiet. That's how it is in the other part of the world. So I don't think I start questioning things. Well, I've always been questioning things. I just knew not to be too overt about it, in the place where I was from. I mean, when I came to America, then I started questioning more. And so it's not like I had conversations with my parents. They came here. My single mom came here too. And like many immigrants, they come from places where you don't question the government. So that's some cultural insight there. If you want to know why many kids of first generation Americans tend to end up on the other side, it's just, it's almost like a natural progression, because people come from places where you are conditioned not to question the government. So if they may come here for the American dream, right? But it's like there's always a component missing in their mindset. And it's almost like they have to be taught when they come here, by the way, when you come for the American dream, you must also learn to value American freedom too. So that's my story. So I have titled this morning coffee stream, and we don't have to stick with use that as the program, but I've titled it Tulsi Stops MAGA Civil War with Clappergate. And then also I might want to try to talk a bit about Stablecoin. I know we're not familiar with it, but I thought that was interesting because we have a resident economist over there. So maybe he could shed some light on how that would help with the current state of the things with the economy. But has anyone kept up with this emerging Clappergate Obama thing? It's trending. It's trending on X anyway. That's why I thought I'd feature it. And I thought it was interesting because we are maybe coming off of the Epstein list letdown, but I've noticed the vibe with MAGA, or maybe what's left of MAGA, that people are more like they're starting to gather around the Tulsi Gabbard's investigation on the Russian Gate hoax that Obama, according to her, now she has documents to prove conclusively, according to her, that this thing was engineered to bring down Trump. What's everyone's take on that? Is this a diversion? Is this a great PR move to get people to move off of Epstein Gate into Bondi Gate into Clappergate, to like now there's actually a concrete villain you can go after, and then Trump will use that to show that he is serious about cleaning house and taking care of the deep state, dealing with the deep state.
Well, first thing to note is this is on brand for Tulsi Gabbard. This was one of the reasons why she left the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. So she made it clear that she didn't want, the country spying on Americans and, kind of overreaching in that standpoint of things. She was one of the Americans that they tried to target with this stuff too. So this is not against her brand to do. Timing wise, I don't know, is there the possibility of some truth to try to distract the mega civil war with this news? Possible. I don't, but this is confirmation of things that many of us who followed that story closely. I actually used to be a pretty strong big fan of the Dan Bongino show in the earlier years when he unfolded a lot of this Russiagate stuff and Crossfire Hurricane stuff. So I followed it. I bought his book, read his first book where he detailed all of this stuff. So this is not new news to me. It is new news to people on the left who in liberal media who were not the liberal media, because a lot of the liberal media knew about it. The people who were on the left believing Russiagate. So in that respect, it is sort of a healthy distraction, a healthy, unhealthy distraction for the country, because what I am seeing from it, more than I'm seeing MAGA calm down on the Epstein thing, is actually a lot of people who were former liberals who ended up coming over and voted for Trump are posting that their eyes are open about Russiagate. And I think that's the sobering take for a lot of people who were liberals, who had bought the whole Russia, collusion hoax idea, and are questioning everything that they've actually been taught by Democrats, by the left-leaning media. Will it heal fractures and wounds that were created by Russiagate? No. But will it open eyes and get people to think and question a lot more of what they're being told and force-fed by our media and by our government? I hope so.
Yeah.
And that's my positive take from it. As far as a distraction goes, of course, everything that happens in Washington, D.C. and occupies the news is going to be a distraction from our daily reality and things that people really, to me, I think, should be focusing on, in terms of kind of making the republic a solid place and building up their local government so that it supports and feeds them the way it's supposed to and doesn't take away their rights. But that's my kind of my overall take on that. But I don't know about whether or not it's actually effective at getting MAGA to be unfractured about Epstein. I think the hardcore are going to still be the hardcore. We really want the files or whatever. So.
Okay. I thought it was interesting that, because, I just learned from you, I didn't know that Dan Bongino was talking about Russiagate as
Oh
part of
yeah,
I mean,
that's how it became popular. That's
I
how
didn't
the
know
show grew.
so,
Yeah.
but it's so it's interesting how Tulsi. So from what I'm seeing from the PR aspect of this, it just seemed to me that this week, if you do a vibe check and temperature check on X, it seemed that Tulsi is kind of stepping up with this Clappergate story, and I just noticed that this the MAGA base, there was this dissatisfied over the Epstein, how they turn out. They seem to be calming down a little, if I may use that word, with Trump. At least that's how I'm perceiving it. You know,
well, I don't know why, because nobody big is going to jail over this. I don't know why we get into this delusionary state where we think that, you know.
Okay, that's true, but I think the thing with I'm calling it Clappergate over Bondygate is that there are at least more concrete artifacts in this gallery that people can wrap their head around.
Absolutely.
And what I like about that is that it doesn't leave a gap for the influencers to come in with their own thing, right? Because when influencers come up with their own thing to fill the story, then the PR staff in the White House, it's tough for them to manage things.
Yeah.
Right?
Wait, and one more thing I'd add too is because Kash Patel actually wrote a book called I think it was The Plot Against the King, I think, and that was about this too. So
Russiagate,
this is how he got his big kahunas. I mean, like I think he and oh gosh, what's the former congressman's name that helped start Truth Social? They both were a big part in revealing the details about Russiagate. So this is, you know, they weren't picked in, you know, out of thin air. These two, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, were picked to head the FBI for this very reason. So,
for Russiagate and dealing with Clapper over
and dealing with that inner corruption within the FBI that led to Russiagate. And
so I think it's interesting now that Tulsi is the face of this. So I'm learning that it was Patel and Bongino who put this into popular circulation, but now Tulsi is kind of leading with this. I just thought it's a very timely move, whether it's deliberate or not, that now MAGA has maybe something more concrete to wrap, to park their story of the deep state under, right? Previously, it was just tough to park it under Epstein list because it wasn't really going anywhere. But now they said, okay, well, here's something new. Let's call, well, not new, but Clappergate and Russia hoax. So this is going to be the framework for how Trump will clean house in the deep state, and you can follow that.
It's not new though, right? And I agree with Nikki that, this was on the agenda. You know what I mean? Like, everybody knew that if Trump won this time, that he was going to come in, and his appointments, pointed to this, that he was going to, start going after all of these, issues. Russiagate is a biggie, right? They made up a story, and our intelligence communities used it.
Did we just like phase out a little? I'm sorry, guys.
Excuse me, what?
No, I can hear everybody. I can hear you all clearly and see you.
Okay.
I just kind of faded out a little there. Sorry. Sorry.
No, but no, I don't look. We've talked the last couple weeks about the Epstein thing. I think it was, it was either mishandled badly, or it's a briar patch. It's a honeypot in the middle of a briar patch, and I know that that's like 3D chess. Doesn't always happen in DC, but this whole thing is just odd to me, right? The timeline, I sort of dug up the timeline. Take into account, Bongino and Kash, talking for 4.5 years on their podcasts about the Epstein list, right? Everybody was talking about it. That guy was the most famous prisoner in the world when he was arrested. And when he, suddenly magically committed suicide, and the guards were asleep and the cameras were off, the entire country was like outraged. And there were people that were going viral at like sports events for holding up Epstein did not kill himself signs, right? So this is, this wasn't like out of left field. We've also known
Yeah.
for about a decade now that there were, Trump and Epstein ran in the same circles and were social friends at the very least until, the early 2000s when, again, seems to be proven. Again, I don't know anything for 100%. I don't think anybody here does either, but Trump kicked Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago, resort for getting creepy with a towel girl. And that sort of seems to be true. And also during the investigation in the early or the mid 2000s that, Epstein actually did get in trouble for ish, sort of. Trump was the only one that helped, the lawyers for the defendants, for the girls. There's a very famous interview with one of the lawyers, one of the lead lawyers, and the interviewer was asking about Donald Trump. And again, this was in like 2009, right?
Yeah,
this was before he was running for president. He was just a famous dude. I think he was still on The Apprentice.
And it all came out when Epstein was arrested too, when they were
all
the list and they were accusing people. Yes,
absolutely. And there were a lot of questions about Donald Trump's connections with him, just because, again, these videos of them at sort of those late 90s high society parties are not new. We also knew if there was a file, Trump's name was likely in there. Sorry, that's the way law enforcement does it. Just for being ancillary at the very least. I mean, I'm not saying he did or did not do anything, but the way they compile these files, somebody like Epstein, if they have a file on him, it's probably going to go back, decades. And because he and Trump were in the same social circles, Trump did ride on his jet one time, but apparently that was a jump flight, from, Florida back to New York, and Epstein wasn't on the plane. Apparently these rich people just, loan their private jets to each other. But my point is that, a lot of people can be in a lot of files internally. Just because you're there or you're a friend, but you're not involved. And there's a reason why they don't tend to release that source information, because they're only supposed to release stuff publicly in court that's pertinent to the prosecution. Right. I think that the argument that the right has, where they're essentially saying, look, if there was if there was a real smoking gun, if Trump was in these files, not just as a social friend, a long time ago, but actually doing some bad stuff, it would have come out in the last few years. It would have come out, when Obama, the feds have had these files forever, right? They haven't really been updated. Epstein would,
Gotcha.
you know what I mean?
You mean they would have they would have
used them against Trump, right? If there was something there, it would absolutely have come out. So I think that there's a
reminder. Epstein his island was raided in 2019 when Trump was president.
That's right.
So the Biden administration had all of the exact same information. Right. The same Department of Justice had all of this information for the last 4 years.
That's right. And again, that is a big point, right? Because they don't have to sit on these things. If they really, hate Trump as much as they say, and it seems like they do, and they did not want him to get reelected, they would have released this shit, right? They would have said, okay, look, here's a smoking gun. Oops. The New York Times got it. Don't know how, but blah, blah, blah. So I think that Trump was always his name was always in the files.
Yeah.
Which was why, Elon Musk, when he said Trump is in the Epstein files, was actually probably technically correct. But then we conflated this idea of a list with a file, and Bondi came out, was like, I have these files on my desk. A lot of people heard, they have the list, this magical list that he would never make, right? List of famous names that have, been pedophiles with me. Like that doesn't exist. It would never exist. Right. Now, it doesn't speak to whether or not
the pedo ring black book. I mean,
right. He had a phone book, right? And again, would you assume that Trump's number was in Epstein's phone book? Yes. Epstein was a billionaire financier that lived in Manhattan in Florida, right? So did Trump. Of course they're going to have each other, right? Anyway, the timeline here is very interesting to me, because on February 21st of this year, Bondi went on an interview on Fox News, I think, and said the Epstein files are on my desk. That's February 21st.
No, she didn't say the Epstein files are on my desk. She was specifically asked, "Are you going to talk about a list, the Epstein list?" And she said, "The file is on my desk. I still have yet to review it."
Yes. No,
But
but
so,
all I'm pointing out here is the date, right?
yes, yes,
February
correct,
21st,
yeah,
Pam Bondi publicly on Fox
yes,
News prime time said this, right? She
yes,
mentioned the Epstein, that she was into, they were diving into it. It's on her desk. And again, we got to remember that of the things that Trump promised during the campaign and is following through on, was Epstein one of the major ones? I don't know. I would say probably not. Again, what we talked about last week, in my opinion, Epstein was in that bucket of transparency, of deep state transparency. And I think for the base and for Trump, the Russia stuff was always the more important stuff, right?
Yeah.
yes,
So when
yes.
Pam Bondi started talking about Epstein in, the third week of February, I think everybody's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that too. Yeah, let's go get that too." Everything, rat-a-tat.
Exactly.
All, Trump
Yeah.
has done so much in his first,
Yeah.
half a year.
Yeah.
Then on February 27th, she handed out those binders, right? And that sort of blew up in their
Yes.
face and blah,
Yep.
blah, blah.
Yep.
Then on March 14th, fast forward, and this is like, again, 2 weeks after the binder fiasco, it did not go well. She goes on Fox News primetime again and says, "They're on my desk. The files are on my desk. We're going through them now." Right. So the point here is that's 3 full weeks between when she first mentioned it and when, she last mentioned it. You mean to tell me that Trump was not aware of his of his head attorney? His, you know what I mean? His mentioning it, he missed it, and he missed the binder fiasco, and then she was allowed to say it. Like, it beggars belief. There's no way
Right.
he was oblivious to these mentions. This is 3 full weeks of coverage getting drummed up. All right.
Yeah.
He knew his name was in there, probably, again, in all the files, right? Like, it's not like, some one document that's like a pending indictment or something. Like, again, we're talking about the files, the corpus of information that they use to make these cases, which is, thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of, hearsay, banknotes, whatever. Right. Of course, his name is in there.
I'm
So-
going to disagree with that. Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
No. Again, like the way these investigations go, if I don't know, if somebody that you knew, if like your neighbor was into like, something awful, like your name could be in that file just because he talked to you one morning when he went to get the morning paper and they observed you. So technically you're in the file, right? So that doesn't mean shit. But my point is that this was a full 3 weeks of national coverage of the top law enforcement person in the country, bringing this issue up, pounding this issue, making a mistake, seemingly handing out these binders, and then doubling down on this issue, a week and a half after that.
Yep.
Okay.
There is zero chance that Trump didn't see that. There is zero chance that Trump, again, knowing that his name technically was probably in these files, but why would he let this burble? Why would he let this gain steam again?
I think I can explain that, but I'll let you finish.
But what I'm saying, let me finish my thought, right? Like, so if you're Trump and you are going, "Oh God, I know I did kick him out of Mar-a-Lago in 2006, but man, that time in 1999, I went and had sex with all those underage girls." Like, you would not be okay with that 3 weeks happening. You know what I mean? Like, this is where it gets weird to me. And this is where I hold out a little, I think hope is the wrong word, but like, I actually do think that this might be a honeypot in a briar patch. Like, this thing is so weird. It is so weird how this is unfolded. And your overall question, Perseus, is this a distraction? Is the Russiagate stuff a distraction from the Epstein stuff? I think that the Russia stuff was always, front and center. That's what Tulsi's been doing since, that he won, right? Like, this is not, it's not coming in as a response to anything. It was going to happen anyway. So the question we need to ask is, what is the Epstein thing doing? Like there's some facts about it that just make it really odd. There's something very odd here. And, maybe or maybe not, the truth is that it is kind of distracting right now to the Russia stuff. If they tried to use it as like a spotlight on the zone and then bring forth this stuff to get it some more oxygen, I don't know if that's working, but I don't know if they're connected. I think that they're connected only in that they kind of both represent like a deep statey, conspiracy kind of thing.
Or
but yeah,
between the different deep state groups. And I'm going to let Perseus finish, give his point before I say that, because I do want to add that.
Yeah, because so the two things I want to point out, and I've always have to qualify myself in saying that I'm really at heart so an independent in between MAGA and everything that's happening in this space. And I say that because you were asking, well, you're wondering how did Trump seem to let things get out of hand? And I just want to point out that people who have known Trump for a long time forget that he had the show called The Apprentice. I don't know whether both of you, did you watch that show? Apprentice?
I used to watch The Apprentice, yes.
So that is his style of management. Even before he had his own show, right? At least what I know of people who actually know him here in New York, he's a very hands-off guy. He doesn't micromanage. He would trust people that he'll bring in, okay? And I would say that's a fault. That's how I see it. He has this revolving door of people like...
To a point, though.
What?
To a point.
Yes, but let me finish, okay? You could see that on his Apprentice show. Like, okay, I'm going to bring you in because I think that you might... be good, but it's on the job training. And then if you messed up, and then I will, say you're fired. But he doesn't seem to know how to intercept people, be a judge of character, like from the onset. He seems to give like people tryouts on the job. And I think that's what I'm noticing here. We noticed that in Trump 1.0, right? Where he brought in Fauci. Right. I mean, Fauci.
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I'm really going to be disagreeing with you on this, Perseus. I'm sorry. Trump 2.0 was very strategic in all the people that he selected. Pam Bondi was one of the lawyers who defended him during his impeachment trial. So she's been a stable, for him. Every single person he selected was hand selected by his inside core group of stable mega people. This is not one of those cases where she was just a trial person and then he's letting her go for it. And he is also one of those people who every single time somebody does something, even if it's in his administration, he will get on to social media and post about them when they make stupid mistakes. And so he is not hands off the way.
If that's true,
anyway,
this did not happen without his knowledge or blessing. That was my point about that 3 weeks. Zero chance he didn't see that. Zero chance.
I'd be the one to disagree with that because
it's impossible.
If that was true, we would not have Fauci. We would not have lockdown. Okay, he would.
That was Trump 1.0. Sorry, that's a whole different administration.
And that's a different issue too.
I think
that was public health.
Trump still has his core operating system right there.
And public health. I mean, we could talk about all the debacles and things that he did wrong with COVID. But he did try to trust the people who were
he listened to the science,
and
even though he claimed he didn't. That's all he did. Really,
so he was a bad judge of character. Yeah. He was a bad judge of character.
This is in his lane, though. They tried to ruin his goddamn life, and they did hamper big time his first term with this exact issue. So, right?
Well, from my perspective,
zero chance.
Okay, so we'll agree to disagree. From my perspective, I feel like he's still bringing some of that 1.0 management style, in which he was just not careful who he lets into his inner circle. That's just my feeling.
I just think it's different. I think the first time he picked deep state people because he was listening to the wrong establishment type Republicans who were telling him, you need to keep this person, you need to keep this person. And this time he's listening to his inner circle, which I agree sometimes make stupid mistakes. I'm not a big Stephen Miller fan. I know, for example, I'm not a big Don Jr. fan. I think he listens to those people, but these are people who are loyal to him.
Yep.
And every single one of these people in his cabinet is loyal to him. You're not seeing the same turnaround that you saw.
Way more people this time.
So why would you listen to Mike Johnson over, you say Elon Musk? when that there are some consequences to his brand cachet with MAGA? That's the question, right?
Okay, that is totally different with the BB, especially if you're talking about the big, beautiful bill and anything that's going on in Congress, is because you have to, because Trump is also, and we talked about this on the show, is he's a negotiator, he's a deal maker. And so he sees that the established Republicans are, those who at least have some power or sway, with their vote or have a seat that's in trouble, need to have something that's important in this bill. That's the way he views it. And he said that very specifically on Maria Bartiromo's show, and I brought it up here, is that was the reason why he went along with some of the stuff in that bill. Granted, we don't like it, no, but that's why. This wasn't him listening to Mike Johnson over, over MAGA in that case. This was him trying to making deals and being Trump. Sorry,
it's very different. It's very different. And
different story.
I would point out that even if, right, so in Trump's first administration, he won again, like it was magical, right? You got to remember that when he ran in 2016, almost all of the establishment Republicans were never Trumpers. They published that National Review article that said never Trump. You had, they literally took themselves off of the plate in terms of being chosen. They thought that there was no way he would win. They wanted to get on what they thought was the right side of history by condemning him, saying, we're not having anything to do with this. And then when he won, he won with a skeleton crew of like weirdos. I mean, no offense, like a lot of them were brilliant and he pulled off, the biggest upset victory in political history, but he didn't have a lot to choose from that first term. And then the Russiagate thing happened and he really didn't have a lot of people to choose from. He sort of mistakenly got rid of a few people that he shouldn't have. And he ended up bringing on, some people that he shouldn't have. Yes, we all agree that he had some staffing problems the first time, but if you fast forward until now, he doesn't have those problems anymore. He pretty much is the establishment. The people around him are strong. He has a pretty deep bench with which to choose from. Pam Bondi did defend him, even though, some mooey MAGAs didn't like her as a pick. She was definitely more solid than Matt Gaetz. She is from Florida. She was sort of DeSantis-y, right? Like, I think that was, a big part of the objection, but again, back to this point,
the gun grabbing issue for people.
That was another one.
Pretty big
but
too.
Perseus, play out your theory, right? Like if he was doing the Apprentice stuff and let's just say Pam Bondi was, he was letting her audition on the public stage and she wasn't doing well. Again, if he was like, oh shit, I banged all those underage girls in 1999 and I'm on tape. Like there is zero chance he would let her go out there and jawbone this issue.
Wait,
for
I'm not
3 full weeks. Zero chance ever. He watches Fox News. Again, letting his people kind of go out there and do their own thing. He does do that. He can't control everything. He hires people and he's like, go. He encourages them seemingly to like get on camera and make hay out of certain things. We saw Kristi Noem kind of go to 11 on that and then kind of dial it back. She's been doing a lot better, right? Since she stopped posing in front of inmates and like fishnets or whatever she was doing. You understand what I'm saying? Like you're right. He does let his people go out there. He doesn't micromanage them specifically. But all I'm saying is that there is zero chance that these 3 weeks of Pam Bondi banging the table about Epstein, there is zero chance he didn't see it. There's zero chance that he let it go. If he was culpable, if there was something, in there. So I don't know exactly what it is. It could be rank incompetence. I wouldn't put anything past anybody, right? But it's odd. The whole thing is odd. The timeline is odd. Now that they're talking to Ghislaine Maxwell is odd. I think it's interesting how a lot of the Democrats are now, demanding, this release and stuff. I don't think it's 3D chess if it is what I think it might be. I think it's very simple.
And that brings up my point that I was going to make, that I think this is an interplay, infighting between the deep state groups or the elitist groups in Washington.
Yeah.
So now first you have the Epstein debacle. Trump isn't addressing it. You didn't hear Democrats make one peep. the prominent Democrats.
Oh yeah.
You didn't hear them make a single peep about the Epstein files when MAGA was having a 50 fit.
Right.
About
For the last 50 years, they haven't made
it. Correct. And then Tulsi Gabbard comes out and basically names Obama. And then you start seeing all the Democrats come out saying, "Oh, release the Epstein files."
I would argue that they started doing that a little bit before, right after Trump got, like, he said, you know, what are you talking about this for? That's when they kind of.
But come on, Nancy Pelosi tweeted about it, and you know, first of all, Obama makes a statement about every young child needs a gay man in their life, kind of just weird creepiness stuff is coming out. And then DNI comes out and she's talking about Crossfire Hurricane. And it's basically the Obama, DOJ targeted Trump and all of this stuff. And then now you are seeing prominent Democrats come out and say, release the Epstein files. This is they are infighting right now with who's got the most political power. They know Trump they know there's no files. They know nothing is going to incriminate Trump.
And they can't release.
So they're using and you can't release information about people that's not in a prosecutorial light at all.
That's why they couldn't release the grand jury stuff. The judge was like, "What are you nuts?" No.
It's you're just bringing out all kinds of lawsuits for defamation of character and kind of liability stuff. So no, that's just so stupid. But they know that. So that is why they're shifting the focus back to Epstein, away from this. And then basically, starting to see news articles basically framing, Tulsi as, making up stories about Russiagate and completely denying, that Russia collusion happened and all this stuff. So they're freaking out. The left is freaking out. But I do think the right, there's still some, there's still some strife on the right about this as well. And, arguably, I mean, yes, is it something that we need to be talking about? It shouldn't be swept under the rug and pushed down as a nothing burger. Absolutely no. I don't. They need to do what they can to prosecute the people who they can prosecute. And that needs to be done. But I just think there's just too much. We're just distracted so easily by things that are happening beyond our control between these elite people that have nothing to do with our direct daily lives.
Yeah.
The reason I'm worried about my grocery bill. I know.
Well, we'll talk about that actually because I want to get Eric's take on this chart that was just released on X, but I'll try to wrap up.
Well, hold on. I have something I just want to share on this real quick.
Okay.
So just to go back to your original question about the Russiagate thing. This, again, I think that it was a concurrent issue of Trump's, right? This was always something he was going to go after if he won. This is not a surprise. Anybody that followed this knows what actually happened, knows what they did. And this was very interesting. Not a lot of people know this, but Hillary Clinton had these reporters following her through her campaign because of the assumption that she was going to trounce, she was going to win, right? And it was going to be this big victory book. And the authors ended up having to pivot, the night of the election, and it became a very different book. And they had to sort of scramble. And honestly, I think that they had to rewrite the ending because I think that they had assumed that she was going to win. So they had sort of planned out like the final chapters. They had to kind of, stop, reverse, and then kind of write this postmortem. But not a lot of people have read this book apparently, because in this book, they detail a conference call that took place the day after the election on November 9th in 2016, where all of the Democrat bigwigs got on the phone with Hillary and her team. And this was like, Podesta, and I think George Soros was even on this call. But they all sort of strategized and they said, okay, we got to go. The only thing we can do right now, it looks like, because she already conceded, it looks like we just need to go full bore on this Russia thing.
This was the insurance policy.
It's in the book.
Agent Strzok we're talking about. This was the insurance policy. And it was actually part of the story on it was actually released in a New York Times article a few years before this. But like this was, I think it was Radcliffe, or gosh, I can't remember exactly who it was. So Dan Bongino outlines it in this book too, and it actually has the actual article where they said, if they were to go after somebody, this is the kind of story that they would put out, and it was very similar to the details that they claimed about Trump. I mean, the whole PP dossier, peeing on on prostitutes, and it just all the weird stuff. You're right, Eric. It was detailed, put out in the open.
They said it.
None of this. It was not in secret at all. A lot of this stuff was very open source data that led to these conclusions, but nobody in left-wing media was publishing it. So of course they weren't going to go out and say, no, that we're fabricating a story and we're lying.
Well, what's important too is the American public, and I think I would put myself in that bucket right at the beginning, right, of 2017, when the accusations first started happening, right? Flynn was the first to go. They claimed that he was colluding, never mind that, it always happens in the middle, between the election and, January 21st, when they take office, there's a period of a month and a half where they have to kind of scramble and establish, connections and, get their people in, because it's not like they just move in, clean on January 21. There's a transition that's been happening for, a month and a half. But anyway, they got rid of Flynn, they got rid of Bannon, they very quickly, Jeff Sessions appointed Mueller, and then it was just all over. But my point is that, back then, the American public, and again, I put myself in this camp, was still largely trusting of the intelligence community, right?
Right.
And there was a national sense of, on the one hand, holy shit, wow, Trump is a Russian spy? Yeah. That sounds weird. But then again, would
you had the
FBI, CIA, DNI, would they all lie about this? That sounds crazy. That their reputations are on the line. They wouldn't, that sounds nuts. Why would they ever do that? Because if it's not true, it would be easily provable. And so I think a lot of the public, and even a lot of people that voted for Trump in 2016, were kind of like, well, let's wait and see. That's why most of the appointment of Mueller as a special counsel was a very popular appointment, because even people that voted for Trump and liked Trump were like, well, shit, if there's a there, again, why would they lie about this? Why would they risk their reputations like this? A special counsel will suss this out, blah, 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 right?
Yeah, which is why Jeff Sessions did it.
We saw that with the medical establishment during COVID as well. I think that was the same reflex of a lot of people, where it was like, why would Fauci and Birx lie?
Correct.
Right? Why would they do this?
I was one of those people. I totally was trusting of them.
And again, me too at first. I moved very quickly off of that in 2020 because I had gone through the Russia thing. I didn't believe them necessarily, but there was a period about 3 or 4 months where I was like, there may be something there, and we have to investigate it, right? And that was the nugget that they sort of operated on, right? Like, we got to find out if there's a there. Sorry, we got to be safe. And they just rat fucked him, sorry to, use foul language on our podcast, but it was, what they did to him was absolutely nuts. And it's good that it's coming out. And there's a lot of stuff that's been coming out, they've been releasing, that's new, right? Like, they just really, and that was a weird one. Yesterday, they released the congressional report from 2017. The Republicans did a report, but it never got released.
Yeah,
which was odd, and people are kind of asking, like,
why am I blanking on his name? The guy who did who started True Social with him. He was a congressman from California.
Oh, Nunes,
yeah, Devin Nunes.
That's right.
This report, I knew about all of this stuff. This is not new to me. This is not new public information, but it is new to people who were not getting it from their liberal media.
That's right.
Yeah.
And including Fox News. Fox News did not talk a lot about some of this stuff either.
So, some of the anchors did, right? Marita Bartiromo
stayed on it the entire time.
Have you seen? She's been releasing her old interviews. She was on it quick.
Mm-hmm. She
wasn't definitive, but she was like, "This smells." Why? Like, he was asking. Yeah, she did good
constantly. Yes, she was. Yeah, that was when I actually started watching her show.
Yeah.
And it was because I was listening to the Dan Bongino podcast, because he would have clips of her on there talking about this stuff, and Devin Nunes on there. So I had listened to this, like I was really like invested in Russiagate.
So
Like,
I want to start
this whole deep state thing. I was pissed. I like that. That really radicalized me, actually,
I want to
against
offer
our media.
I want to offer a few closing points on my take on this, and then we want to I want to get your take on another topic that affects us directly, like Nikki says. So I have never really been invested in either the Russiagate story and Epstein list, even though, bad actors ought to be held accountable in those stories. What I've always if I'm mentioning those two stories, it's only because in the larger picture, I'm always concerned how these two stories can derail the America First movement, right? People like we're seeing in Epstein list. That's my ultimate concern. Is like, you hear people saying, "I'm not going to come out and vote in the midterms because Bongino and Bondi and all that was a letdown." I mean, there are a lot of people like that who just react like that. So that's where I'm coming from, because I really want to see the grassroots America First succeed, whether it's under MAGA, Trump, or whatever. I want to have longevity. So it was concerning for me when this Epstein gate seemed to have knocked the wind out of the momentum, the popularity that Trump, MAGA, and America First was enjoying. Right, it was like a unnecessary, like a side quest thing. And admittedly, I thought Bongino, Bondi, and Patel was like I didn't know what they were doing, actually. So why I titled this "Tulsi Stops MAGA Wars," because I think it's kind of positive and hopeful that there is a new, fresh face now. Tulsi, right? Tulsi is kind of leading the Russiagate thing to divert attention. Maybe that's not a good way of saying it, and potentially get MAGA, if they want to follow this kind of story, like there's something more concrete for them, and then it would potentially help the MAGA brand maybe regain some of the popularity that they may have lost over Bondygate and Epstein. So that's why I'm tracking the story. Like I don't want to have any consequences in the midterms.
You got to remember that the MAGA coalition that won for Trump in this last election is a huge tent, right? It's Maha. It was the Doge. Like we've talked about this the last few weeks. I do agree that Trump sort of misread his base in the room a little bit on the big, beautiful bill, right? I do think that the proper path would have been to lean a little bit more into Doge and lean a little bit harder on, the swamp creatures that, wanted the spending. It would never have been perfect, but I think that he sort of misread that. But it's not catastrophic. The midterms are light years away. Anybody talking about the midterms right now, it's like, these polls can change in a heartbeat. So I don't think that you're wrong, though, in that this is a more unifying issue than Epstein. And again, just going back to what we talked about earlier today, like the Epstein rollout or whatever it is, or the botched rollout, it's so weird. There's so much about it that is odd to me that I just think that it defies human nature. I think it defies logic and physics. I'm just not sure what to make of it. Again, I don't know what it is, but we'll see.
I do agree. Powerful people don't want to be exposed. Period. And it's not going to happen.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is I don't know what the Trump administration and the rollout and Bondi and like there's stuff that's weird about all this. Again, I still contend that 3 weeks that I outlined, there is zero chance that Trump didn't see it. There's zero chance that if Trump was actually, in any sort of, hot water with this, would have let that continue. Right. Like, again, that's where I'm at with all that. But the Russiagate thing is certainly unifying. I just don't think it's a response to Epstein. I just think it's a separate stream that was always going and was always going to land right about now. It just so happens that there's other things going on. And there's let
me just put this differently. So I think both of you are rightfully interested in the specifics and details, like who the actors are and what they're doing in the background. For me at my end, what I'm saying is I'm interested in tracking the story as if the America First / MAGA, Trump, wherever you want to call it, is like a stock. So I'm interested in seeing, if in terms of popularity, that stock is gaining points again, with Tulsi leading the Russiagate. That's how I'm seeing it. If you're measuring stocks, like the way stocks are moving in terms of popularity, just a general feel of things, the vibe check, right? I'm saying it's like trending positive now back for Trump and MAGA, with Tulsi leading with Russiagate. That's all I'm saying. I'm not offering any analysis of whether what's right and what's wrong, or that's where I'm just kind of offering that more surface and top level.
Yeah, I partially agree with you, and I think in a fantasy world, this would make a difference in terms of elections, even if the midterms were closer. They would make a difference. People are voting based on their wallets. So this guy came in saying, "We're going to make your wallet heavier. We're going to make your bank accounts deeper." People who are paying attention to investments do feel some positivity there. People who are going to buy groceries like me and paying for gas, things are pretty stable, maybe down a little bit, but it still hurts. People who are out of a job and unemployed, or people who are newly unemployed because of federal job losses, are worried about where they're getting a job and where they're going to be getting their next paycheck from. And so that's the thing that people are going to be voting on. They're not going to be voting on Russiagate and Epstein. I'm sorry. Whether these MAGA people, fickle MAGA people who are saying they're going to, not vote, vote against Republicans in the midterms because of Epstein Gate. One, I think most of them are lying. And two, it's just not reality of the way and the reasons that people vote. It's not, it's fantasy land. And so I see you got that chart that's going around that the Democrats are putting up, which I think is freaking hilarious.
It is hilarious. But Nikki, real quick, the polling, and again, we can talk about polling too, but in general, the polling on the whole Epstein thing is that the American public doesn't care. Right. I think you're right. I think that a lot of the stuff is
2019 stuff. I've not seen any recent.
Yeah, no, but they've certainly been, trying to make a case for it. And I think I saw it on, I don't know, like CNN. It wasn't, Fox News. It was just about the disconnect between sort of social media and DC caring about this issue versus the American public. I think you're absolutely right.
Okay, so wait, I'll be more precise then. So when I said the stock is trending, maybe it's trending in the influencer bubble. Okay, the people who have this.
No, I know what you mean. That's what I'm saying. I was like, and yeah, sure it is. On social media where people are paying attention.
But you're right, Nikki.
It's great.
The reality that people live in on this chart here, and I just want to open this share screen with. I was at the store yesterday, and I love getting jumbo eggs, which are usually expensive. Do you remember, like half a year ago, they were $12 for a dozen? Well, I'm happy to report that for a dozen jumbo eggs, it's $6 now.
Okay.
In New York.
I have not had to pay that much money for eggs.
That's in New York.
Exactly. That is your liberal, local, blue state policies that are causing your eggs prices to be as sky high as they are. Now, however, yes.
Well, it came down, is what I'm saying. It came down from $12.
Oh, and I know, but I never paid that much for a dozen eggs. That's freaking ridiculous. I cannot.
But I want to get Eric's take and then your take on,
Okay, can we just zoom in on the dates on this? That's all I want to do.
Yeah, this is hilarious. I don't know if we can. I don't know how to do that here.
I just think it's hilarious.
So I'm just going to try to read it. So we have like this kind of flat line of prices, and then it climbs right around the end of 2020, like in the middle of, is it the middle?
Pandemic, lockdown.
2021, it looks like. So, and I think the people who are using this to, first of all, this was released by the Democrat Party.
Yes, it was.
To try to implicate this current administration. But it was interesting that this happened in the course of the last administration. So what's your take, Eric? What does this chart tell us? What's a story that they want us to the point that they're trying to make with this, that they may have misfired.
This was one of the biggest, dumbest, social media mistakes I've seen in a while. It was pretty bad, and it was reposted by a ton of Democrat and leftist, operatives, I guess, to sort of try and spike some sort of football, but they just didn't read the dates. This literally shows, what happened after we printed all that money and Biden got into office. And this is like every uptick here outlines Biden's time in office. Trump, 2015 starts at the right-hand side of this thing in like a 16th of an inch, and that's literally just, January, where Trump wasn't even in office yet. This is just dumb.
This is hilarious.
So
right? It's hilarious. It's like, you are making the case for me. It's so funny. So Trump 1.0, you see the prices were at that level. And then we had this break with the last administration, Biden, and then it was that. And then they released this. So it's very confusing to people who don't know what's the point you're trying to make here. What's your technique?
That's exactly what my take is. Like, the majority of this time where this graph was peaking and plateauing was when Democrats were in charge of things. So if you're going to show the data, if you're going to make a statement, show the data. Use 2-point number points if you're really going to try to manipulate people into thinking that it's Trump that's costing people their groceries. If you want to look at the price point, show the price points from July 2025 to July 2024. Look at it and show that. Don't show an entire graph that incriminates your party policy.
Right.
Idiots.
Just basic, you could be selective at. So I was saying, because I said earlier I was concerned about, midterms prospect with all this distractions. I said, thank you for creating this piece of graphic, because now there's another reason. You just admitted why this current Trump, this administration should be given another, 2 years, the majority, because of this. Thank you for speaking of. Thank you for making the case for America first. It's hilarious.
Yeah. And I don't see it actually on their posts anymore. Did they delete it?
Yeah, they deleted it. That's the other story. It's hilarious. But the internet never forgets, as they say. So
I just put up the same thing, but I'm showing how it was reposted with enthusiasm by multiple,
Oh yeah, Tezu.
It's crazy town. And they haven't deleted it.
So you know what's also interesting? It tells me that sometimes I think I overestimate the other side. And if this tells me this is the people that are handling your PR, image making, maybe we have a chance. Yeah.
Maybe so.
Yeah. So I was hoping I would think that Eric, you would have more to say about that, since
from an economic standpoint, it is what it is. It's to be fair, Trump did sign the CARES Act, right? That was a whole lot of fucking money.
Yes, he did.
That I would argue that probably contributed to that initial spike. But Biden doubled and tripled down on this shit. They passed way too much, more money printing and spending. The Inflation Reduction Act, which was literally just a renamed Green New Deal, caused and perpetuated the majority of this. So it's idiotic that they would try and embrace this. And, it also just shows, look, the right is not immune from this, but it also does show the sort of the automaton nature of, how they roll, right, with their narrative. The message goes out. The joke is they have this morning phone call to use these certain phrases throughout the day on CNN, NPR, on Capitol Hill or whatever. Because we see that all the time. They use the same phrases and the same word structure and almost the same tweets and posts. This is one of those. This went out from the Democrats, and it immediately was reposted and reshared, again, with enthusiasm by massively prominent leftists and Democrat
That's the funny part. That's the
voices.
hilarious
And they
part.
didn't even check. They didn't look.
Because they're so still into TDS that they they didn't check their own data. But
the lesson goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the very beginning about our parents teaching us. Always look at the source material, judge for yourself. Before you draw conclusions and then post stupid shit.
And look, again, we'll see, I think, but this could be similar to what's happening with the Epstein situation, but on a smaller scale. You know what I mean? There's something about it. Again, I contend that it's just weird. It's odd. It's off. And the fact that it's sort of catching fire on the left, and there's a lot of people on the left that are demanding this release, pounding the table. I don't know. It's an instinct that they have. It's how they roll. And again, it doesn't take a lot of strategizing to potentially put out a honeypot and just let them do what they do and drum up, a demand for something and then go, here you go.
Yeah. Well,
we'll see. Again, that's fanciful for sure, but it's either that or rank incompetence, and either one is equally likely.
It's always fun to watch people create their own news cycle. So thank you for that really insightful chart. So we're coming up to the hour and running out of time to talk about stablecoin. I guess I'll research more about that. That's an interesting topic to me because it does, I think, ultimately affect our day-to-day.
The Genius Act. Again,
because how people will conduct their commerce in the future.
Tune in to Hotep Jesus Live. He talks about this stuff. He has a financial segment on every single one of his shows. He talks about stable coins. He's talked about the Genius Act multiple times. That's his lane. That is not my lane at all.
It will in the future and how we conduct commerce. So I think it'll be interesting to at least.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to affect us all. Eventually we will be using it.
So I have a happy bean from Nikki. It's a timeline cleanse. It's what we're very good at doing here. So are we ready for it? Let's see.
Sure. Yeah.
Happy bean.
Happy bean.
And do you want to set us? What's the setup here? What's going on here before I play the thing? Or should I just go ahead and play?
No setup. Just go ahead and say it. I mean, it's the clarinet. Clarinet is New Orleans.
That's awesome.
It's beautiful.
Sing to your babies, read to your babies.
That kid is going to grow up loving.
I love that
of that instrument.
Yeah, but the story is she's on grandma's shoulders and listening to music. And so I like the connection between the generations there and the passing on of culture and something beautiful. So that's how I read that happy me. So thanks for sharing that. It's beautiful. So, enjoy your weekend. And thanks for making MCS 45. And I'll catch you guys next week.
All right, guys.
Okay.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.